Good morning. It is a pleasure for me to be here. My name is Andres Gomez. I'm part of Friends of the Earth Colombia, and we are joining here this fabulous panel talking about phasing out fossil fuels and health, these topics of oil and gas and health. And the expansion of fossil fuels is one of the biggest threats to human and planetary health. We have a fantastic panel today who will address the deadly risk associated with oil, gas, and coal, efforts by mothers and others to eliminate this risk, and why a global plans to phase out fuels and accelerate a clean and fair energy transition is critical on this juncture in time. It is my pleasure to introduce you to our fantastic panel today. First of all is going to be Bhavreen Kandhari. It's a citizen environmentalist working for clean air. She is spearheading several public movements in Delhi and India for an end to air pollution and for environmental justice, including the campaigns My Right to Breathe, the Delhi Tres SOS, and Warrior Moms. Bhavreen will be sharing her experience working with other moms to campaign to clean air. We also have via Zoom, Rosamund Adoo-Kissi-Debrah is a Breath Life ambassador and founder of the Ella Robert Family Foundation. She became a clean air advocate after her 9-year-old daughter, Ella, died in 2013 from asthma due to air pollution. Ella was the first person in the world to have air pollution be listed as the cause of her death certificate. Rosamund is also teacher, lecturer, and a honorary fellow of the British Science Association. And Rosamund will share Ella's story and talk about the courageous work she has been doing over the past decade to protect people from fossil fuels, pollution, and additional steps that can be taken today. We also have Dr. Arvind Kumar. Dr. Kumar is an eminent chest surgeon, the founder of the trustee of Lung Care Foundation, and the chairman of the Institute of Chest Surgery at Mendata. Dr. Kumar was troubled to see black deposits of toxins in the lungs of non-smoking patients from Delhi, and this was motivated him to start a lung care foundation. Dr. Kumar will talk about the impacts of air pollution and climate change on human health. Professor Dr. Johan Rockström is the director of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research and professor at the Institute of Earth and Environmental Sciences at Potsdam University. He is an international recognized sustainability and water expert who created the new planetary boundaries framework for human development. Professor Rockström will touch on the latest IPCC assessment reports or YMO report, State of 2021, published last week, a status quo of climate science, why we must urgently act and phase out fossil fuels. And Reverend Anders Wejryd was the Archbishop of Sweden, has been a long-time eco-leader in Sweden and internationally. He led the Church of Sweden to be the first religious body in the world to divest from fossil fuels. Archbishop Anders will share his experience working to end the era of fossil fuels. We will have an order of interventions here. The first will be Archbishop Anders, and we will have like 7 minutes for each presentation, and that will be great. So it's an honor for me, Archbishop, and for us here to hear your voice first.
Thank you very much. It was interesting to hear what I was going to talk about. And now we will see if it comes out that way or not. Yes, I was the Archbishop of Church of Sweden for, I think, 8 or 9 years, until 8 years ago when I retired. So my experiences are old. But around 2009, we had an international interreligious climate summit in Uppsala. That meant a lot, I think, to many religious bodies, to an eye-opener to many of them. And I have been involved in these natural science and theology things all my life. For me, climate change is an issue of religious values and of human moral values. I do, of course, believe that God wants us to respect the earth. But I also do know that it is in our own enlightened self-interest to respect the earth and to create a society that protects the most vulnerable, to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to fulfill their potential, to live a healthy life. These are simple teachings, not easy to follow. But there is no question that they are right and good, and that we should strive to fulfill them. That is why, when I was Archbishop, we divested our investment holdings from fossil fuel companies and became one of the first, or probably the first larger religious group in the world to do so. We did this because we had made moral and theological statements about caring for the environment for years. So we simply had to. We knew that fossil fuels were the cause of the climate crisis. We knew that we needed to act and to lead by example. Thanks to a very committed and competent financial team, we were able to do this very successfully. We learned from this experience that even when something may seem difficult, it can be done if the task is approached with resolve and intelligence. Like all of you, I remain deeply concerned about climate change. Despite the importance of the Paris Agreement and all of the efforts that we have made collectively around the world, we are far from where we need to be. The production of fossil fuel continues at a rate that is utterly unsustainable. The carbon is not left where it belongs. Millions of people are already suffering the impacts of climate change, and hundreds of millions more will suffer if we do not act rapidly. We have known this for more than 40 years. But nothing yet has got us to shift away from fossil fuels and towards clean, affordable energy for all, which is obviously possible today. This must change because the threat to humanity and to God's good earth is far too great. That is why I have signed the letter calling for a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. And my successor, Antje Jackelén, she did the same. The three pillars of the treaty are aligned with moral and religious values. We must end all new fossil fuel projects now. We must have a fair, coordinated phase-out of fossil fuels. We must ensure that resources are made available to support those countries, regions, workers, and communities that are most vulnerable to climate change and to the energy transition. In the 1980s, several of my friends and colleagues in the faith community supported the development of another treaty, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. They saw the world headed in a direction that could only end up as a disaster. Many people thought they were just a group of dreamers or idealists. But the case was made. Now this case is the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. And that is why I'm so glad to speak with you today and to be present in this panel. May God bless our efforts and make us successful.
Thank you, Archbishop. And now is the turn for Johan. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. And let me start just to make one clear statement that I know that Rosamund Adoo-Kissi and Arvind, Kumar and Bhavreen Kandhari will be digging and providing us with even more really important evidence from. But as a climate scientist, I think it's important to start by saying that I find it completely unacceptable that we're allowing up to 8-9 million people to die prematurely every year because of air pollutants caused by fossil fuel burning. This is a higher number than the people that we lost during the pandemic. We are today at an account of roughly 15 million, but it's gone over 2 years. So we are just accepting something which is larger in terms of human suffering than what we all agree is an unacceptable crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic. So that is just enough to draw a line and to support the immediate phase out of fossil fuels. But let me also say that, air pollutants is but one of the direct disastrous impacts we're seeing already at 1.2 degrees Celsius warming where we are today. Because the immediate largest hit on vulnerable communities, particularly in the world, is freshwater scarcity. It is, just look at what's happening in Kenya right now, just look at the heat in India with 50 degrees Celsius, drying out the whole part of many of the farming regions around central India, which has even forced Prime Minister Modi to stop the export of wheat right as we speak. This is occurring at 1.2 degrees Celsius warming of global mean temperature rise. It sounds like a small number, but you know that is more than 100% higher than the warmest temperature on Earth since we left the last ice age. Very few people recognize this. We are so far out in the danger zone already today. Why this reference? Well, it is because we've been around on planet Earth for 250,000 years. We've lived in ice age. We've had a very rough time. We were just a few million people. We were hunters and gatherers. Then we leave the last ice age 20,000 years ago, and we enter the Garden of Eden, if I may use that term, Archbishop.
Well, I'm not guarding that.
This extraordinarily stable state of the Earth system we've had since we left the last ice age, the last 12,000 years. And what did we do during this Garden of Eden period, this extraordinarily stable climate where temperatures varied? Can you imagine? Temperatures varied on average plus minus a half degree, 0.5 degrees Celsius on planet Earth. And that is when we went from being hunters and gatherers to becoming farmers. We start establishing ourselves as sedentary farmers, and off we go into our pathway towards specialization, craft, culture, civilizations, and the modern world as we know it is evolving. And now we are 7.8 billion co-citizens on planet Earth with, I would totally agree, with a moral obligation of allowing every person to have a dignified life on planet Earth. And most importantly, there's a new definition of justice. And that is because we are now, unequivocally according to science, at risk of destabilizing the entire planet, the ultimate definition of justice in my vocabulary is to hand over to our children a planet that is at least as livable as the planet where I, as an adult, was born. That is the new definition of justice. This is nothing less than a pivotal moment for humanity's future. And now we're heading very rapidly towards 2.4 degrees Celsius warming. By the way, a place we haven't been in for the past 7 million years. Science showed in the IPCC AR6 for the first time actually confirming very, very clearly that 1.5 is not some arbitrary number. It's not some compromise with low-lying island states in Paris that are at risk of being completely eradicated because of sea level rise. Oh no, it is a climate planetary boundary. It is a physically based boundary. If you go beyond it, you go from moderate risks, which major impacts already today, to really high risks. And not only high risks, risks of crossing tipping points, risks of losing Arctic summer ice, part of the AMOC, the overturning of heat in North Atlantic, risking even parts of the Amazon rainforest, the West Antarctic ice shelf, coral reef systems across the world, life support systems, not for tens of millions of people, but I have been part of so many IPCC reports, and I cannot, you shouldn't quote me on Twitter on the following, but I'm quite sure that this is the first IPCC report that talks about billions, not millions, of people suffering. Just check through the text and you'll see the word billions impacted are coming up for the first time. What is that billion referring to primarily? Well, it is actually that we are at risk of, over just 2 generations, between now and 2070, of actually causing large tracts on planet Earth to become unlivable. Unlivable not necessarily because of air pollutants, but because of heat. Because we have so much health research, and we have the experts here, showing that if you go above a wet bulb temperature of roughly 30 degrees Celsius on average over the year, it's very difficult for us to not threaten our own health and even life. And what happens then is, of course, you get a very, disastrously unequal world, because who will cope with this? Well, it's the rich people who can afford closing themselves into air-conditioned space. But everyone else risks their lives. But people don't want to risk their lives, so what will they do? Well, they will be displaced. You'll have displacement, migration, and conflicts. You will destabilize societies, and we're starting to see the first signs of this. So therefore, we have so much science today that we do not want to go past 1.5. That is why we are increasingly, also within the climate sciences, recognizing that the policy path that we've chosen on climate, which is to calculate a global carbon budget and to get a pathway of mitigation, which basically is cutting emissions by half by 2030 with a net zero landing by 2050, is still necessary. This is what drives the whole UNFCCC and the COP processes. As you may know, over 100 countries in the world, half of the world's countries, have actually pledged net zero pathways, which is not bad. It's just that they're not delivering, but it's not bad that we have those at least on paper. But clearly, we're not bending the curves yet. So we need something additional. We need more powerful policymaking and governance. And I think that there are 2 options for us. And number 1 is, of course, economics. And the economics is that we simply need a global price on carbon. And we need that price to go from 100 euros a ton of carbon dioxide up to 200, which is what science says is the social cost of carbon. But the second one is what we're discussing here, which is some form of treaty, some form of regulatory means. Legislate, putting it as a legislation, end dates on fossil fuel extraction and use. And you know the science here. I mean, just over the past few weeks, we've seen many publications showing that, in the order of 40% of even existing infrastructure of coal, oil, and natural gas needs to be phased out before they come to life end in their life cycles. I mean, this is basically bulldozing down infrastructure. And at the same time, we have more than 195 new 1 gigaton carbon dioxide equivalent projects in the financial pipelines. I mean, this is like completely disconnecting from the science and the necessity of moving. So something more than just political debates and economic policy is needed. And that's why I think that these forms of putting formalized end dates may be an absolute necessity for us. And we're seeing it happening in different sectors, like the automotive industry is putting upon itself phase-out date on the internal combustion engine. Well, you could do the same thing for the entire planet in the form of a treaty, for example. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Professor. Now, Doctor, it's your turn, and no, we are going to be online with Rosamund. Yeah, sorry.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Afternoon, everyone. Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the first 2 speakers, and especially the way the Reverend talks about we are stewards of this planet, and he's very, very right about that. As my previous career was teaching philosophy, and it is due to my daughter's premature passing. That's the reason why I am here with you this morning. And also, I concur with the fact that the new report that came out in 2019, that 9 million people lives ended prematurely due to fossil fuels. And I do ask the question, as did the scientists, why nothing is being done about it? Because as he said, not as many people died from COVID, not that we are comparing deaths, but we all saw the urgency and the rollout of the vaccine. And I can't quite work out why, when it comes to air pollution, there is no such urgency. I do question, is it because there are few that are benefiting from it? I don't know. I still find it really strange that my daughter, it took until 2020 that she still is the only person to have air pollution on her death certificate. And those of you in the room may come to your own conclusions why that is. Whenever I talk about her, I always think it's really, really important to mention about her suffering. And I'm sure Dr. Kumar will concur later with this, because we have purposely, because it's incredibly distressing, only put, I suppose, very happy pictures of her out. And I have thought once or twice whether to release any pictures of her in ICU, which was the reason why she's no longer here. And I do wonder that even by doing that, it would take a lot for my family to do that. But would the message still, get across to those who need to hear the message? I doubt it very much. I am on my way to Sweden. I hope to meet Alok Sharma, and I hope he will update me with all those countries that made pledges last year about what they are going to be doing about phasing out fossil fuel, or was it phasing down? I couldn't believe that at the end of COP, we got to the stage of talking about phasing out or phasing down when it is killing 9 million people. My daughter would want me to mention her suffering. She would want me to mention to you why she got ill. And the reason why she got ill purely is due to where we live, a very busy road. And this is multiplied many times over across the world. There are lots of people who live near main and busy roads. And we know children are the most vulnerable. Their lungs are stunted. And I'm sure Dr. Kumar will give you examples of that. I don't now know what it's going to take for governments to take this matter urgently. I really don't know. I am in the UK right now. We have a public consultation going out, believe it or not, about PM 2.5, which is the worst pollutant that you could ever imagine. And this should have been part of the Environment Bill last year. It should have been a given, but no. It didn't make the Environment Act, and instead it's been put out to public consultation. I do not know at the end of the consultation what the governments are going to do. So also it is very important to mention here that Baroness Jenny Jones, who will be in Sweden, currently has got a Clean Air Human Rights Bill going through the Houses of Lords now. Again, I think, Father, we need all the prayers, definitely at this stage. We need that bill to go through to make clean air an actual human right. Because I feel until a government or until a country does that, these atrocities are going to continue. I remember, and I'm sure my legal representatives.
Rosamund, can you hear us? No, probably. Probably. Oh, something happened with. Okay.
Can we speak out from this side?
Yeah, can
Inform her
Ros
she has muted herself?
Rosamund? Is unmute. Something in the speaker, probably in the chat. That's unfortunate.
She's muted there.
Okay. I think we need to try to move, and then if you can solve that, we will give her the word again. Okay, Dr. Kumar, that's your turn then. Thank you.
Let me know when I have 2 minutes left.
Yes, I
So
will.
first of all, thank you. And a very warm good morning to all of you. We've heard a very passionate appeal by Honorable Archbishop. We've heard the rock solid science behind this issue by my esteemed colleague. We've heard the pain of a mother who lost her daughter at the age of 9 years due to the effects of these fossil fuels. What am I going to add to this? I am a chest surgeon who's been operating on lungs for the last 30 years at some of the biggest hospitals in the most polluted city of the world, the famous city of New Delhi. And I have had the, if I may use the word in quotes, pleasure or truly a misfortune of seeing a change in the color of the lungs of my people in the last 30 years. Can I have that slide, please, sir? And it was this picture which actually, yeah, the next one. Yeah, so this picture actually brought this surgeon out of the OR into public space to talk about this issue. As a doctor, my job was to treat people. I was doing it happily. There was no reason for me to come out of the operation room or the hospital into public space and talk about something which is totally unrelated to my profession, which is air pollution. But these effects, so on your left, friends, is a normal pink lung that we are born with. And on your right is the lung of a non-smoker from the city of Delhi that I started seeing about decade and a half ago. And my most agonizing moment was, next slide, when I saw a teenager having black deposits on the lung. And I thought to myself that if a teenager is having these black deposits on the lungs, what will happen to him by the time he reaches 40s and 50s, if at all he reaches that age? And this set me thinking, as someone who has privy to this information, shall I continue to do my duty and be in OR, or spare some time and come out and share this information with the world? Because all of you may, or some of you may be undergoing this change, but you can't peep inside your chest and know. By the time you come to know, it's too late. So I decided that no, it's my duty, moral duty, obligation to come out and bring these images into public space to let people know what's happening inside the chest due to the effects of air pollution. So this is my submission number 1. Submission number 2 that I want to make regarding the impact which I have seen during my short span of 3 decades is the change in my patient profile of lung cancer. I started lung cancer surgery in 1988. 90% of my patients were smokers, mostly men in 50s and 60s. And when I looked at my data few years back, I find that today over 50% of my patients are so-called non-smokers. I use the word so-called because there is a reason. I'll explain that. 40% of them are women, non-smokers. The age has shifted by decade and a half, and 10% of them are in 30s. My youngest patient was a 24-year-old girl, and I see mostly in 40s. So more and more non-smokers, rise in incidence, more and more non-smokers, more and more women, and more younger people. Why is it happening? I'll give you the reason. In a polluted city, the infants, the newborns, start smoking from the first breath of their life. Why? PM 2.5 has been now labeled as equal to smoke. 22.5 microgram PM 2.5 is equal to 1 cigarette in terms of damage. So if you are living in a city which has an average PM 2.5 of 250 and you are breathing, you are inhaling 10 cigarettes every day. And that's the average PM 2.5 of the beautiful city that I come from, the city of New Delhi. So every child who's born in that city starts smoking 10 cigarettes from the first breath of his life. And we know as scientists that by the time you have smoked for 20, 25 years, your lungs are ready to become cancerous. So that's the reason I'm seeing cancers in 20s and 30s. So friends, here is the evidence from a doctor, his pain, which is being expressed in public platform about the damage that he's seeing. This is evidence number 2. Number 3, 2 years back, Lung Care Foundation, which I started because of being pained by this process, we conducted a study of the incidence of asthma among school children in Delhi. 1,100 children between the ages of 14 and 16 years had a 42-question questionnaire as per international guidelines, and an on-site spirometry, which is the best way to assess your lung function, done under medical supervision on-site in the school. And would you imagine, 33% of the children were found to have spirometry-proved asthma. Can you believe it that 1 out of every 3 child in the city of Delhi has spirometry-proved asthma? And tragic thing was 90% of them were not even aware, and less than 3% were on treatment. And we know that asthma, if treated, people do well, and if not treated, we don't do well. This is evidence number 3. This is directly from the ground, pain of a doctor who's seeing this change on the ground. What do? Either we stop breathing, which we cannot, or we clean the air that we breathe. Why is it not becoming a worldwide phenomena the way COVID did? And as a doctor who's, I have 2 minutes? Yeah, thank you. As a doctor who's traveled across the world, met people on the ground, the reason is people's lack of awareness. Even doctors, when I meet, they know that yes, air pollution causes damage, but they are not aware of the extent of damage, severity of damage, and how big a problem it is. And that is the reason I feel it's time for the doctors to get involved, because it's an environmental and chemical issue to begin with. But in terms of its impact, it's a pure health issue. It is destroying the health of our present and future generations, because now we know that the damage actually starts from inside the mother's womb and continues till our last death. We have formed a group called Doctors for Clean Air with the purpose of making people aware, because we've taken a AAA approach. Make people aware, awaken them to the danger, and when they are aware and awakened, they'll take the actions or demand the actions which need to be taken to meet this problem. I strongly believe that it's time. Of course, everyone has to contribute, but since air pollution and climate change are major health issues, doctors across the world should rise to this occasion, make people aware, make them awakened, and ask them to start a global movement from bottoms up approach. And when people start asking for it, the politicians will not come and make pledges and go away and forget. They will come, make pledges, and implement. And that's when we will have clean air, which I believe is a human right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much, Doctor. Bhavreen, please, it's your turn.
So I don't know what to say. Everything has been said, and of course, Dr. Kumar's very elaborated. The city where I'm coming from, the most polluted city of the world. When the priest said it, the father was so right. The scientists have said it, the doctors have said it, but I'm here as I'm a mother, a concerned parent who just has no words. We are just talking pledges. I don't usually write my stuff, and what I'm thinking right now is we are still where we were. I have been trying to fight for clean air for almost 2 decades. 2003 is when my daughters were born, twin girls, and they were initial symptoms of first 2 years. They couldn't had regular colds and coughs, and I grew my little studies on what was happening. But I'm an ordinary citizen, and I'm not an expert, so nobody will listen to me. But then, we had initially, Dr. Kumar and certain doctors there who were beginning to talk, because we were looking at London, at that time, the smog of London, and trying to bring that whole, narrative here. And but of course, the government was in denial until 2016. That there was one morning actually, when the schools were shut down for the first time because there was so much smog, the city was choking. And that evening, many parents of the city, we all got together for a protest, and this movement was born, My Right to Breathe. We don't have organizations. We are just parents, concerned parents. Like now, we are concerned parents globally. There are wonderful parents here also who are, there they are, who from Sweden, who welcomed us, and who are here from different parts of the world, Germany and Colombia, and in India as well. We're, mothers who are absolutely, because we see it now. The science is in front, the facts are there, figures are there, research is there, commissions, drafts, name it. We're sick of seeing all that. Everything is there, everything is done, but there is no action. That is where I always say this, that how do you react, like when we go back home today, all of us, and somebody tells us at home, like, did you feed the kids, or what the kids eat? Yeah, we give them a little poison. So how do you feel? Yeah, so you say, okay, fine, or you'll kill them. We will kill them, and we are not doing that. We should be that angry. We should be so agitated. And that's like what Dr. Arvind Kumar has just said, that we must demand that, because we are ready. We come here, or we are hearing all these pledges and these various summits, and they come and talk. Our leaders are talking, but back home, it's very different. And it's mostly for all the countries. So I wonder what happens when a child takes a pledge in school and breaks it or something. We do all these pledges, starts very early in life. What happens? And they're punished. So who is that authority, and who is that in the world who's going to be doing that? Because we are all just talking and it's not happening, and the damage is being done. So if my girls have turned 18 this year, and I have been fighting this before that, I was hoping that I will be able to give them cleaner air. It hasn't happened. Their lungs are damaged, and something that I've learned from the doctors and Dr. Arvind Kumar, that it's irreversible damage. I say, okay, I am rich and I can, change the lungs and do all that, is not going to happen, because the damage has been done. I just don't understand why we are willing to accept this. We know the facts. We know that fossil fuels are bad, even to the point that the politicians are coming and now accepting and saying this in the speeches. But then what are we doing? Because you are still cutting my, decimating forests in my country. You tell me to use a bicycle, or get into sustainability, but then the thermal power plant emissions are going way high, because we are not monitoring that. So it's only very little that is in our hands as citizens. It's mostly the leaders and the politicians, the policy makers, who will have to not only talk, but they'll have to act. So it's making them really accountable, and not accepting just talks, whether it is through policy, interfering into policy, that is the citizens and the NGOs or experts from the civil society who should be part of the policy now, and who should ensure that it's being enforced, as well as also, I don't know, we are now at that stage that everything should be in litigation, but then if that is going to help also, because in some countries the judiciary is also not supporting. So why should Rosamund have to pay a price with her life of her daughter to go to the courts, and then only they hear you? We've not been able to do one case in my country and show. Are we saying that there's not been one death in my country, in one child who's lost a life not because of air pollution? We have over 2.5 million people who lose lives because of fossil fuel and air pollution attributed to fossil fuel. So this is just very, very heartbreaking. I speak, and every time I speak, I get goose pimples, because I just know that my children are going to live 10 years less. I mean, that is something which is the science is saying it could be more, but what is written and said, it's 10 years less, and it's very heartbreaking. And I'm sure every parent feels like this, and every grandparent feels like this. So we should just not accept, and health and air pollution, health and fossil fuels, they are connected, and we must not forget that. We must ensure that health in my country, in the city, we have a commission, the Air Quality Commission in the most polluted city of the world doesn't even help the health department, person there, somebody to represent. So obviously we are still not connecting, we're not doing the right things, we have to go the right way. I mean, that's what it is, and I hope, and I always say that, in a crisis, think like a mother. Thinking like a mother is like a tool, and I hope everybody should really think like a parent and think for the future of the children and the planet now. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhavreen. Thank you very much. It's been really amazing hearing all your stories and very moving. Like, so difficult to think and to react to that. And I think we can try to build together around just one question because we are running out of time. And these questions arise from what you just said. Like, when you think as a mother, when you think as a woman, I would like to, I don't know, to try to, and is Rosamund like hearing us? Are you hearing us?
I can hear you.
Oh,
I don't know whether you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly.
Oh, you can.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. We are going to build on this question. Like I was saying here, like as like if we think as a mother, how can we imagine fair phasing out of fossil fuels, especially when we, like mainly we belong to the global south, and we know that the weak health infrastructure is there, and we know the lots of damage which is fossil fuel making to our societies, and energy is needed for what we do, and for even for people far away to go to a hospital. How can we imagine a future phasing out fossil fuels? Like trying to build on that a little bit from the health perspective, from the fairness perspective. Like if any one of you want to start.
Yeah, I can go first. I think every parent's worst nightmare is outliving their child. So let's start, and it's quite frightening when you say it. Imagine a life without your child then. Which is more important, fossil fuels or the life of your child? And that would be a starting point. There seems to be a problem connecting the dots to, as Bhavreen said, it's just the judiciary need to be brought round. And I think, and it will be interesting what Dr. Kumar will say about that. I don't know how postmortems are carried out in India, but I think if someone dies, especially a child dies, they need to see if there's PM 2.5 in the body and maybe start listing it. There seems to be a disconnect between, we know people are dying prematurely, and yet it is not recognized officially on death certificates or even as a contributory factor. But I think we need to keep on joining the dots, and I assume we need to continue to pressure the judiciary that can be conservative, let's be honest, at times. But the more people that get pollution on a death certificate, I do think, and especially sadly, children, I do think the tide will change.
Thank you, Rosamund. Thank you very much, Archbishop.
Yes, I made a bold statement when I said that there are alternatives. I mean, there are alternatives today. Of course, they are underfinanced compared to what the fossil fuel industry is. But if things are to change, someone has to take some bold steps like this treaty. I mean, what we see in the resources of solar energy and of wind energy and of also energy from the sea, I mean, it is there. It is just that the oil has been so cheap, so no one has invested in it. And therefore, it is a responsibility for us to show that there are alternatives, and that the continuation of what we have is absolutely devastating because it ruins the very basis of our lives, namely to give life to new generations.
Thank you, Archbishop. Thank you very much.
I think it's a question of deciding your priority. When COVID struck, every activity came to a halt, but the world still survived. Everybody said, well, finance will crash, markets will crash, but we are almost back to normal. And we faced that period of months and months of everything being closed, and the world still survived. So if tomorrow we were to take a decision, though in the interest of the health of our children, we've got to phase it out. It's not a question that, okay, if an alternative comes, then we'll phase it out. We say no, we are phasing it out. And you will be surprised how quickly, how cheaply the alternatives will emerge, because they are there, but they are submerged by the lobbying of the fossil group.
Yep. Thank you, Doctor. Bhavreen?
Oh, well, I mean, it's all been said. I don't want to take so much time on something, but yes, this is what it is. I mean, it has to be a no. Now there's no, and there are, like Father said, that there are alternatives. We will change, but don't expect people to change first, and then because they continue to do the wrong things, and these narratives are so wrong. You ride bikes and no to plastics and all that. Well, the plastic shouldn't exist, first of all. So that is what needs to be. We have to always concentrate on the sources of pollution, and that's where the policymakers and the government will be able to do it. It's not our job. You will tell us, you will lead, and we will follow. That's how it is.
Thank you. Thank you. There is a little question from a journalist here, a request.
Hello, my name is Leon Lidigu from the Daily Nation in Kenya. Now, Doctor, I want to understand, since fossil fuels are the parents to microplastics, are there any evidences you might have on the impact on inhaling microplastics and their linkages to cancer and other diseases?
You've got to do it shortly.
Sure. So all these evidences exist that when you inhale these chemicals, they go and damage the lining of your windpipe and the lungs. And the day you start inhaling, the damage starts then and there. Initial phase, there is swelling, then there is chronic swelling. And if this goes on for years and years, you have irreversible changes. And final end point is the cancerous development. There is enough evidence in the literature, studies around the world, which have proved this conclusively.
Thank you.
Having lived in Delhi for like 5 years, I saw what people are calling the oxygen restaurants. Have they been infected?
Yeah, so this is what I'm saying, that this is trying to divert the attention from the main issue. You'll be shocked that our governments, the local city government, has installed something called smoke towers. So they have put up huge exhaust fans on rounded towers and put some
fans, like
put some filters there, and they are taking the air, making it pass through filter and letting it out. Air knows no boundary. Can you install enough filters to cover thousands and thousands of square kilometers of a country like India? No, it's fooling people. But then it comes on the television, government takes massive step. World's first smoke tower in the city of New Delhi. People start clapping. So that is where I say the role of awareness comes. People need to be told the solution to pollution is not these gimmicks. The solution to pollution is to hit at the source. Once you tell people, make them aware, and people's movement, then politicians will not be able to fool them with the gimmicks. This is what I believe.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for these wonderful presentations, Archbishop, Dr. Bhavreen, Rosamund. We really appreciate your comments. Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.